All right, so we're diving into masculinity in the modern world today,
Yeah,
and something that I think a lot of our listeners are interested in.
absolutely.
Um, and we're going to be looking at a book called Men in Crisis, Leadership and Legacy
hmm
to kind of guide this deep dive.
Yeah, this is a great book. Really gets into the evolution of masculinity,
Yeah.
the pressures that men are facing,
Mhm.
and how to kind of navigate a world where
Uh,
those traditional roles, those expectations
yeah.
are really being questioned and changing rapidly.
And I think one of the most fascinating parts of the book is that it starts really early on.
hmm
It goes all the way back to our hunter-gatherer ancestors.
Right, and what's fascinating about that is that it shows that
Sure.
these traits that we associate with masculinity, like strength, courage, leadership,
Yeah.
these weren't just like nice to haves back then.
Right?
They were essential for survival.
Literally like life or death.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the book uses this great example talking about spatial awareness.
Oh.
You know how some guys are just like amazing at parking a car
Hmm.
or like navigating?
Yeah.
That could actually be a legacy of our ancestors
Right.
who were hunters,
Wow.
tracking prey, navigating through the wilderness. I mean, those are skills that literally meant bringing home dinner.
So that's fascinating to think
Mhm.
that something like,
Yeah.
being able to parallel park
Mm-hmm.
might actually be, a skill that's been passed down
Could be, yeah.
from our
It
ancestors.
makes you think, right,
Yeah.
about how those traits that we often think of as just like personality quirks,
Right.
they were actually honed over generations because they were essential for the survival of the tribe.
Right, right.
And as we kind of move from hunting and gathering to farming and then to industrial societies,
Yeah.
those masculine traits that were once about physical survival,
Hmm.
they started influencing the institutions we built, the roles that men took on, the expectations that society placed on men.
Okay, so you're saying there's like a direct line from those hunter-gatherers
It's a fascinating argument.
to like how our society is structured today.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's complex,
Right.
but the book makes a really compelling case that those early influences
Yeah.
really shaped the way we think about gender roles and expectations even today.
Okay, so fast forward to today, and things feel a little bit different.
Yeah, a lot different.
The world has changed dramatically,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the book argues that,
Yeah,
these traditional paths to masculinity are being disrupted.
they are.
We can even see it in like, the decline of manufacturing jobs.
Exactly.
Those were classic male-dominated industries
Right.
where men could, provide for their families, get a sense of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And those jobs are shrinking.
They are.
And a lot of men are feeling lost.
Yeah, and that's a key point. The book brings up this sense of a crisis of masculinity.
Okay, so you're saying it's not just about jobs.
It's not just about jobs, no.
There's like a deeper sense of,
Yeah,
I don't know, unease or confusion about what it means to be a man today.
exactly. And the book gives some interesting examples from around the world.
Okay.
Like the herbivore men phenomenon in Japan.
Herbivore man.
Yeah, it's this trend where men are actively rejecting.
Really?
Yeah, they're rejecting those traditional expectations of marriage, of career, of being the breadwinner.
Wow, so it's like a complete
Yeah.
like 180 from what it.
It's a really interesting cultural phenomenon.
Yeah,
And it shows you how deeply these shifts are impacting men's lives and identities.
Okay, before we get too deep into the crisis though,
Sure.
I want to rewind a bit
Okay.
because the book lays some groundwork by diving into the biology of masculinity,
Mm-hmm.
specifically testosterone.
Right, testosterone.
It gets a bad rap sometimes, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
People think it's just about aggression and anger.
Right, it's this like oversimplified view.
Yeah.
And the book really pushes back against that.
Right.
It emphasizes that testosterone plays a vital role in things like physical strength, risk-taking, competitiveness, even that drive to achieve and build.
Mm-hmm.
It's a powerful hormone that's been essential to men throughout history.
Okay, so it's not just about like, being aggressive or being a jerk.
No, not at all.
There's more to it than that.
It's a complex hormone with a lot of different effects.
But the book also points out that it's not as simple as more testosterone equals more masculinity.
Exactly. That's a really important point.
Yeah.
It's not just about the amount of testosterone you have.
Yeah.
It's about how you channel that energy.
Mhm.
It's about your choices, your social environment, all these other factors.
Okay, so there's a lot of nuance there.
There is, yeah.
It's not just black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this next part is really interesting, especially when we think about, you know,
Yeah.
relationships
Yeah.
and those unspoken expectations.
Mm-hmm.
That can cause so much tension.
Excellent.
The book explores this idea of cognitive differences between men and women.
Right, and this is where the book gets a little controversial.
Okay.
It argues that men and women, on average, have different cognitive strengths.
Like what kind of strengths?
Well, for example, men often excel in spatial
And
reasoning.
facial reasoning.
That's that ability to visualize and manipulate objects mentally,
Okay.
which would have been really important for those hunters we were talking
Right,
about.
for tracking and navigating.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Women, on the other hand, often have an advantage in verbal fluency and emotional processing.
Okay, so it's not that one is better than the other.
Exactly.
It's just that they're
They're different.
different.
And the book argues that those differences can lead to misunderstandings and conflicts if we're not aware of them,
That makes sense.
especially in relationships where those unspoken expectations.
Right, those covert contracts.
Exactly. Those covert contracts can really cause problems if men and women are approaching those agreements from fundamentally different perspectives.
So it's not about saying one is better.
Uh-huh.
It's just about recognizing,
Recognizing the differences.
right, and using that knowledge
To communicate better.
yeah, to build stronger relationships.
Yes.
Okay, so that leads us to the big question the book tackles head on. The crisis of masculinity. We
Yeah.
touched on it earlier,
Mm-hmm.
but let's dig deeper.
Okay.
The book argues that men are facing a real crisis in the modern world.
A crisis of identity, of purpose, of belonging.
Wow, that's pretty heavy.
It is, yeah.
So what are the signs of this crisis? What are we seeing?
Well, we see it in the rising rates of male suicide, in the decline of male educational attainment. Wow. In the increasing numbers of men who are dropping out of the workforce.
And the book connects this crisis to some broader societal shifts.
It does, yeah.
It talks about how institutions have changed and how certain ideologies like feminism and Marxism have had an impact on those institutions and the expectations placed on men.
Right, and it's not about pointing fingers or blaming anyone.
Right. It's about trying to understand the historical and cultural context in which this crisis is unfolding.
Okay, so it's about seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly, and understanding how those larger forces are impacting the lives of men on a personal level.
Right, because it's easy to just feel like you're the only one going through this.
Absolutely.
But the book is saying that there are these larger forces at play
There are?
that are affecting all men.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just you.
It's not just you. You're not alone.
That's really reassuring to hear.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the strengths of the book.
Yeah.
It helps you see that you're not alone in this.
Right, that other men are going through similar struggles and
Thank
that
you.
there are ways to navigate these challenges.
There are, and that's what we'll be talking about in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, so stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore the solutions and strategies that Men in Crisis offers for reclaiming masculinity and building a better future for men. Looking forward to it. So we were talking about this crisis of masculinity last time.
Yeah, and it's pretty heavy stuff.
It is.
But the book doesn't just leave us there, right?
Yeah, definitely not.
It actually offers some solutions
It does.
and some strategies for men to kind of navigate this new world.
Right, it's not just a diagnosis.
Yeah.
It's also a roadmap.
Okay, so let's dive into that roadmap.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin to tackle this crisis?
Well, the book starts by talking about the importance of understanding covert contracts in relationships.
Okay, and that's something that I know a lot of our listeners are particularly interested in.
Absolutely. It's a huge topic in the men's rights community.
Right, and the book argues that a lot of the frustration and conflict that men feel stems from those unspoken expectations and agreements.
Yeah, those unwritten rules that can lead to so much resentment on both sides.
Right, because you don't even know what you're doing wrong half the time.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to bring those covert contracts out into the open.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, the book encourages men to become more aware of these contracts, first of all.
Okay, so just being aware that they exist.
Exactly. Recognizing that they're operating in the background, and then to start having those difficult conversations about what's actually expected.
Ooh, those conversations can be tough.
They can be, but they're essential.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just walking around on eggshells.
Exactly. And the book provides some guidance on how to have those conversations.
Okay, like what?
Well, it encourages men to communicate their needs and expectations clearly,
Okay.
to listen to their partner's perspectives.
Right, so it's a two-way street.
Absolutely. It's about dialogue and compromise.
Okay, so it's not about, one person dictating the terms.
No, it's about finding a balance that works for both partners.
Sounds easier said than done.
It can be, yeah. But the book provides some really helpful tools and strategies.
Now, the book also talks about the importance of men finding purpose and meaning in life.
Right. And this is something that goes beyond just career or material success.
Okay, so it's not just about making money or climbing the corporate ladder.
No, it's about finding something that gives your life direction and significance.
Okay, like what?
It could be anything, really. It could be creative pursuits, community involvement, spiritual exploration.
So it's about finding your passion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and using that passion to make a positive impact on the world.
That makes sense.
It's about finding your mission.
Right, something that gets you out of bed in the morning.
Exactly, something that makes you feel alive.
Okay, I like that.
And the book provides some really inspiring examples of men who have found their purpose in all sorts of different ways.
Now, another strategy the book highlights is building strong communities.
Right, and this is especially important in today's world.
Yeah, because it feels like we're more isolated than ever.
Exactly, and the book argues that men are wired for connection.
Okay, so it's not just a nice to have.
It's a biological need.
Interesting.
We need those bonds of brotherhood.
And how do we build those bonds in today's world?
Well, the book offers some practical advice,
Okay.
like joining men's groups, finding mentors, volunteering in your community.
So it's about being proactive.
Exactly. It's about making an effort to connect with other men.
Right, because those connections aren't just going to magically appear.
No, you have to go out and find them.
And the book also talks about the importance of men's mental health.
Yeah, this is a huge issue.
Yeah, and it's often stigmatized.
It is, unfortunately.
So what does the book have to say about that?
Well, it starts by acknowledging that men are often taught to suppress their emotions.
Right, be strong, don't cry.
Exactly, and that can have really damaging consequences.
Yeah, because those emotions don't just disappear.
They bottle up.
Right, and they can manifest in unhealthy ways.
Absolutely, and the book encourages men to challenge those harmful stereotypes.
Okay, so it's about giving yourself permission to feel.
Exactly, and to express those emotions in healthy ways.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, the book talks about the benefits of therapy, men's support groups, even just having trusted friends or family members to talk to.
Right, so it's about finding your support system.
Absolutely, and it's also about finding activities that provide an emotional outlet.
Okay, like what?
Things like sports, exercise, creative pursuits.
So it's about finding healthy ways to process those emotions.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the book provides a lot of great resources and tips on how to do that.
Now, we've talked about relationships, purpose, community, mental health. What else does the book offer in terms of actionable strategies?
Well, it also dives into the importance of physical health and well-being.
Okay, so eating right, exercising.
Exactly, taking care of your body.
But isn't that just common sense?
It is, but the book goes a step further.
Okay.
It talks about the specific challenges that men face.
Like what?
Well, for example, men have higher rates of heart disease and certain types of cancer.
That's scary.
It is, and the book provides some targeted strategies for addressing those risks.
So it's not just generic health advice.
No, it's tailored specifically to men's needs.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, I think a lot of men feel like those general health messages don't really apply to them.
Right, like they're geared towards women.
Exactly. But this book really takes a men's health perspective.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Right.
Have relationships, purpose, community, mental health, physical health. Is there a common thread that ties all these strategies together?
There is.
Okay, what is it?
It's about taking responsibility for your own life,
Okay,
for your own well-being, for your own choices.
so it's about empowerment.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that you have the power to create the life you want,
Even in a world that feels challenging.
especially in a world that feels challenging.
And it's not about ignoring the challenges.
Right? No, it's about acknowledging them but choosing to focus on solutions.
Okay, so it's about a mindset shift.
Absolutely. It's about reclaiming that sense of agency and empowerment.
I like that.
It's about being proactive rather than reactive.
Right, not just letting life happen to you.
Exactly. Taking control of your own destiny.
The book also talks about the importance of men stepping up and being leaders.
Yes, and not just in their personal lives,
Oh.
but in their communities and in society as a whole.
So what does leadership look like in this context?
Well, the book argues that leadership isn't about dominating others or seeking power.
Okay.
It's about using your strengths to make a positive impact.
So it's
Th-
about service.
Exactly. It's about being a protector, a provider, a guide, a role model.
Okay, I like that.
And it's something that every man can do in his own way.
So it's not just about being the CDO or the president.
No, it's about leading by example in your everyday life.
Right, being a good husband, a good father, a good friend.
Absolutely. Those are all forms of leadership.
And this idea of leadership ties back to the book's discussion of the historical roots of masculinity, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Because throughout history, men have often been the ones to build, to protect, to innovate.
Right, and the book argues that these are positive aspects of masculinity that should be celebrated.
Okay, but it's not about returning to some outdated patriarchal model, right?
No, it's about finding a new balance.
Okay.
A way to integrate those positive masculine traits into a modern world.
Okay, so it's about evolving.
Exactly. It's about adapting to the changing times while still honoring the best of what it means to be a man.
Hmm. That's a good way to put it.
I think it's important for men to hear that message.
Yeah, because I think a lot of men feel like they're being told to reject their masculinity altogether.
Right, and that's not what this book is about at all.
Okay, good.
It's about finding a healthy and balanced expression of masculinity.
Now, before we wrap up this part,
Sure.
I want to touch on one more strategy that the book highlights,
Okay.
and that's the importance of developing a strong sense of self-awareness.
Yes, this is crucial.
Why is that so important?
Because self-awareness is the foundation for everything else.
Okay, so it's like the starting point.
Yeah. Exactly. It's about understanding your own strengths and weaknesses,
Yeah.
your values, your beliefs,
It's your triggers.
your triggers, your patterns.
So it's about knowing yourself.
Yeah, and being honest with yourself.
And how do you develop self-awareness?
It's a process.
Okay.
The book offers some tools and strategies.
Like what?
Things like journaling, meditation, seeking feedback from trusted sources.
So it's about being intentional about it.
Absolutely. It's about making time for introspection and reflection.
Okay, wow. We've explored some pretty powerful strategies here.
We have.
Taking responsibility for your life, building strong relationships, finding purpose, prioritizing your well-being, stepping up as a leader, cultivating self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Are you starting to see a pattern here?
I am.
Okay, what is it?
It's all about taking ownership of your life.
Right?
It's about being proactive. It's about making conscious choices.
And it's about becoming the best version of yourself.
Exactly.
Wow, that's powerful stuff.
It is, and I think it's a message that a lot of men need to hear.
All right, so that brings us to the end of part 2 of our deep dive into men in crisis.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
But there's still more to uncover.
There is.
We'll be back in part 3 to explore some of the most controversial issues facing men today
Mm-hmm. Looking forward to it.
and to discuss how we can create a better future for ourselves, our families, and our communities.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great conversation.
Welcome back to part 3 of our deep dive into men in crisis.
Yeah, it's been a great discussion so far.
Yeah, and one thing that struck me as we were reading this book
Mm-hmm.
is that it doesn't just diagnose the problem,
Right,
like
yeah.
a lot of books do. It actually offers a vision for the future,
It does, yeah.
which is really refreshing.
It's hopeful.
Yeah.
It's empowering.
So let's talk about that vision. What does a positive future for men look like, according to this book?
Oh, I think it's a future where men feel a sense of belonging,
Okay.
where they feel respected, where they feel valued for their unique contributions, where they feel supported in pursuing their goals and their aspirations.
So it's not just about fixing the problems. It's about creating something new.
Exactly. It's about
Yeah.
building a better world for men, for families, for everyone.
Okay, that sounds great in theory, but how do we get there?
Well, the book offers some really concrete strategies,
Okay.
and it all starts with personal responsibility.
Okay, so that inner work we were talking about.
Exactly. You got to start with yourself.
Right. You can't change the world if you haven't even taken control of your own life.
Exactly. It's about building that strong foundation within
Hmm.
so that you can then go out and make a positive impact.
So things like, developing self-awareness,
Yeah.
cultivating healthy habits, finding your purpose,
Mm-hmm.
building strong relationships.
All of that. Yeah.
But it's not just about individual effort, is it?
No, definitely not. The book also talks about the importance of community.
Right, those bonds of brotherhood that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly, because we're stronger together.
Yeah, we need each other's support.
We do, and I think that's something that a lot of men are missing in their lives.
Yeah, it's easy to feel isolated in today's world.
It is, but the good news is that we can create those communities.
Mm.
We can join men's groups. We can volunteer. We can just make an effort to connect with other men.
Right, because those connections aren't just going to fall into our laps.
No, you got to be proactive.
Now, the book also encourages men to be more active in shaping the cultural narrative around masculinity.
Yes, that's a really important point.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, it means speaking out against harmful stereotypes,
Okay.
challenging those who seek to demonize masculinity.
Right, because there's a lot of that going around these days.
There is, and I think it's important for men to push back against that.
Yeah, to reclaim the narrative.
Exactly, to offer a more balanced and nuanced perspective.
So it's not about denying the problems.
No.
It's about presenting a more complete picture.
Absolutely, and it's about advocating for policies and practices that support men and boys.
Okay, so it's about taking action.
Yeah, it's about making a difference.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to this idea of personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really key to everything we've been talking about.
It is, yeah.
So can you elaborate on that a bit more?
Sure. I think it's about recognizing that you have a choice in how you respond to any situation.
Okay.
You can choose to be a victim,
Mm-hmm.
or you can choose to be empowered.
And that choice makes all the difference.
It does, because when you take responsibility for your own life,
Yeah.
you start to see possibilities that you didn't see before.
You feel more in control.
Exactly, and you're no longer at the mercy of external forces.
So it's about reclaiming your power.
Absolutely, and that's what this book is all about.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
This book, Men in Crisis, it's a call to action.
It is,
It's a roadmap to a better future for men.
and I highly recommend it to anyone who's listening.
Yeah, if you want to learn more about the challenges facing men today and what you can do to create positive change,
This book is a great place to start.
you can find Men in Crisis, Leadership and Legacy on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
And we'll put links in the show notes as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
Until next time, keep those minds sharp and those conversations flowing.